Welcome to BA Bootcamp. My name is Luc Vermaas, and together with Gert Zwedijk, we ensure that you stay informed of the latest developments in the field of business analysis. We combine different theoretical approaches with our extensive practical experience from the field so that you immediately leave our sessions with tangible tips and ideas to put in practice in your daily work. Have fun watching, and if you want to stay informed in our latest videos, follow us on YouTube. Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Episode 9 of our BABOK Untangled series, Gert. It has been long overdue. I mean, we had the plan to do this way earlier, but fortunate for us that we had a lot of exciting things on our agenda, working on new trainings and giving the training, creating content for other interesting companies. But now we really wanted to take the time and to make sure that we finish our BABOK Untangled series, which one of the episodes we were still that we still needed to cover was the competencies. While we're covering this one, we also realize this is the last one in this series, but we do want to mention that this is definitely not the last thing you will see from us. We're really eager to also learn from you what would be some of the topics that you're interested in listening and hearing from us about when it comes to business analysis. I already quickly made a poll on our YouTube channel, asking some questions around, hey, what is it what you want to listen or hear more about? I already got some responses about cases showing more practical examples of how we take attempts at some of the actually putting some of the knowledge areas in practice, like real life use cases. And I think that's something we can definitely focus on because as you know, both Gert and myself are still active in the field, so we are on a daily basis still encounter a lot of the interesting challenges that you as a BA will experience as well, where also the BABOK sometimes is still helping us moving things forward. So we took that note, but also feel free to respond in any free format, either on this video or just engage with us through chat if there's anything specifically you're interested in, so that we can take that into our content roadmap for 2023. But for today, it's all about competencies. As you see, we had 9 sessions before, so in case you missed any of them, no worries. They are all online on our YouTube channel at the moment. So at this time, we're going to cover the last one, which is competencies. And we deliberately put this as last. So if you look at the BABOK, this one is not, it's not the last chapter in the BABOK, but we wanted to pay special attention to this because we feel that competencies, a lot of the things you have in the BABOK are very theoretical. It's a matter of learning, whether it's a technique or steps, and certain orders, where actually competencies is a whole different ball game, so to say. It's not about, oh, I learn a book and now I'm competent, right? So this is much more about you as a person developing yourself, learning, failing, and becoming better at things. So therefore, competencies is a bit of a different one, opposite of the other chapters we discussed before. So just covering the things we have discussed in the last sessions, as you can see, if you look at all the chapters, the only one left is still underlying competencies. So we're really happy that we could pull this off, ideally a bit faster than we hoped for, but at least now we can finally cover with the last topics of our BABOK overview. So underlying competencies, that's what the chapter is about. So what does this entail? So basically the underlying competency is about, as I mentioned, right, it's more about behavior, characteristics, of course also about knowledge, but it's a bit of a different knowledge than what we describe in knowledge areas, right, where again it's more about techniques. This is much more about the personal qualities that as a business analyst you should possess in order to actually perform good business analysis. You can be as good as studying the whole BABOK from top to bottom, you can remember every word of it, that still doesn't make you a good business analyst, because being a good business analyst is also about competencies. And the BABOK describes, in this case, the competencies in a broader sense. So it also talks about, for instance, understanding certain tools and technology that can help you, become a more efficient, smarter, work smarter business analyst. But a lot of that of it is about interaction skills, communication skills, business knowledge, characteristics, and of course, a lot about analytical thinking and problem solving. So we will cover these topics all today, all in today's session. There are a lot of sub-competencies below this one. We will not cover all of them, but we just took a few out of there that we think, well, are specifically important for a business analyst to, to make sure that you can maybe focus on those competencies moving forward when it comes to learning. I think what is an interesting image to show is actually, if you look at the BABOK, there are many different views on a visualization of the BABOK. I think this is a really simple and clear diagram that shows on the left-hand side. It shows the knowledge areas. It talks about the techniques. It talks about the perspectives in the middle. But then on the right-hand side, you actually see underlying competencies. And what I find interesting in this visual, and it kind of relates to how we think about competencies, is that it's equally as important as understanding your knowledge areas, right? Because as you can see, they're equally in size, which kind of represents the relative importance of both elements. And that's why we also really believe that focusing and training your competencies will really make you a better business analyst, where the BABOK, as in the knowledge areas, really provide you with structure, techniques to perform the tasks. But you definitely, I would say, need to focus also maybe even more on the competencies that are behind them. And
Yeah, you could say soft skills and
ideas.
hard skills. So the hard skills on the left, the soft skills on the right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So let's kick off with our first, well, let's call it the chapter that's in the BABOK, which is about analytical thinking and problem solving, which is a broad description, which could cover a lot of various elements. And the BABOK describes them as creative thinking as part of that, decision making, learning, problem solving, systems thinking, conceptual thinking, and visual thinking, all concepts of analytical thinking and problem solving, but all in itself have a certain objective. Where I think creative thinking, we kind of all understand what that is, right? Where you really talk about, okay, you're encountered with a challenge or an opportunity or anything that you feel needs to have a solution, which could not be maybe the standard solution out there. You first want to generate ideas and approaches, and maybe
exactly
completely
solutions.
Exactly alternative or alternatives to maybe the standard problem solving you would normally do. But at some point, yeah.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, typically brainstorming sessions. So when I think about creative thinking, well, you could, together with your stakeholders, have a creative thinking session like a brainstorming session. So make sure you come up with lots of ideas. Everybody writes a post-it note to make sure that his or her new ideas are being elicited in some way. And on top of the ideas of some people, another person may come up with even better ideas. So that's how creative thinking works. Okay, you could say, well, I could do it on my own, but most of the time, this is all about, well, collaboration with your stakeholders to come up with new ideas, approaches, solutions, things like that.
Yeah, and I think for me, definitely creative thinking, well, at least personally, I rather don't do alone. I rather do that with multiple people. As you were saying, how many people can spark new ideas, new perspectives, going back to the perspectives chapter that we covered earlier. But at the same time, you might also be somebody that gets their creative ideas under the shower, right? So everybody has their own ways of creative thinking and has their creative moments, but it's at least important to highlight this. I think for decision making, it's a bit more I would say clear in terms of, as a BA, sometimes you also have to make certain decisions, where often it's the stakeholders making the decision, but at least you need to make sure that there are certain criteria involved that can help steer the decision.
Exactly. Typically, you would say, well, it's just about making the decision, but of course, this competency is also about gathering information to be able to make a decision, to compare different solution options you may have found to identify the best solution option. And that is typically needed during, well, collaboration with other stakeholders, of course, and during tasks like define design options. That's part of the requirement analysis and design definition knowledge area. And of course, the analyzing potential value and recommended solution. So these are typical, well, tasks that BAs do in which they need this particular competency.
Exactly. And then,
yeah,
I was about to say learning. So I think learning is a bit of a, well, maybe fake one in this, because I mean, yeah, of course, everybody can learn, but I think what we would try to say here is that how quickly can you absorb new and different types of information, because as a BA you will have to analyze documents or maybe other articles, types, internet, process maps, other type of information that will help you get more context of the situation. So being able to learn quickly, I think that's the challenge in here and developing this competency. I mean, the one could take maybe 4 weeks analyzing something, the other might take a week. So it also takes a lot of practice to make sure you learn in the right way. Do you know where to go to? What are your sources? Did you had a proper understanding of the organization and where the stakeholders sit in terms of, okay, I need to go to those people to get more information. I need to have the access to that document to make sure that you can. So it's also about being smart in learning.
Exactly. What I really think for projects and business change initiatives in general is that, well, if you start a new project, everybody's learning all the time. So everybody's new to this specific business change.
So in what I'm where I'm working in, should I now all of a sudden change the whole process of my business analysis activities? Or is there maybe something else that's behind the challenge that's being raised, right?
Exactly. You may come up with some symptoms. So people you're talking to may actually not just say what the problem is, but they may tell you the symptoms that are within your organization. So I think this is an important competency to find the proper problem your organization has. And what Luc says, yeah, I agree. You cannot come up with the right solution when you haven't found the right problem. So you should do some problem solving first. And actually, that might take some time to find the real problem of your organization, of your particular stakeholder. Could be the case. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So root cause analysis is often a term used here. So like, are you really able to find the root cause of the problem rather than, like Gert is saying, fixing the symptoms? Yeah. So maybe as the one that is coming next, systems thinking, I believe is often, at least for me personally, was always one of those ones that I think what is it actually? I mean, for the others here in the list, I could easily think of at okay, I understand what it entails and how I could potentially also become better at certain competency. But I think the systems thinking for me was always a bit of the vague one. So maybe we can spend a bit more time.
Yeah, we have some separate slides on this one, so we skip it for now. we go to conceptual thinking first, and we'll zoom into the systems thinking in the next slide. Yeah, conceptual thinking. I think you can use this competency when you start clustering post-it or sticky notes after a brainstorm session. So with this, you will have to assess what post-its are important, belong to the scope, for instance, and which can be grouped together. So this is part of the conceptual thinking competency many BAs use in their daily jobs, I guess. The visual thinking, I think, is just as important because it helps you make visualizations. I do this all the time. So when I'm in a room where people are just talking about a certain topic, well, then most of the times I step forward to make things more visual on a whiteboard or flip over. And that makes the attendees, well, that they're more on the same page. And I think this is what it's all about. Make sure you visualize things as a BA to be able to work together as a group. You don't go there alone. You go there with your stakeholders. Visualization will really help you to come to some kind of agreement or consensus, or well, at least have the same perspective of what you're talking about. So very
To be
important.
honest, if I hardly go in a meeting where I do not have at least, a slide or a Miro board or anything
Exactly.
that helps to make it visual. I mean, often we talk about processes, and we don't, and I'm not talking about completely pixel perfect BPMN 2.0 process maps. No, it's just as simple as put some blocks on a piece of paper.
Yeah.
And then already
Could be
quickly
just a
somebody
drawing
can
or a
see.
picture.
Exactly. So, and somebody say, oh yeah, but that block, that doesn't make sense. And then you already have, just by adding 5 blocks on a piece of paper, identify that one of the blocks might not be the correct one, which triggers new conversations, new insights. So I cannot stress enough that, visualization, and that, we will get to that point where we will talk about interaction skills, where people have, different ideas. I think everybody remembers the images of or there are many examples around there on Google where there are comics and where somebody tries to explain something, and then somebody in his mind is thinking about it, and you see these images, and then while you progress to the conversation, then the outcome is then like, I don't know, a certain type of dog, and then the other person was thinking about something completely else. Right. So I think there's a lot of things out there. So it's really important to try to make that same visualization. Yeah.
Absolutely.
But now coming to the one that indeed I think will deserve a bit more attention.
Yeah. That will be about systems thinking. Yeah. First, the definition of one of the definitions of a system. A group of interacting or interrelated elements that act accordingly or according to a set of rules to form a unified whole. That's a Wikipedia definition. Of course, there's many definitions. Well, many people have on their minds when they're talking about systems, they think about information systems. And of course, that's a right picture. But a system is actually much more than that. So if you look at the next picture, you see a car. And well, the essential property of a car is that it can drive, right? So no part of the car can do that by itself. Other example of a system, well, you see here all these components, they all have to work together to make sure that this particular car is going to drive, right? And the other one, the third one, that's also a system. So a system, well, the human body as a system. And it consists of all kinds of organs like the heart, the lungs, and brain, for instance. And the essential properties of the body is life. However, no organ can exist on its own. So the heart needs the lungs and the brain needs the heart to make sure the oxygen and nutrients are being transported so it can function. That's what systems thinking is about. So think about some, well, system as um, um, a lot of components that all work together, components that cannot exist on their own, and they really need to work together in a proper way to make sure the piece, the whole system can function in a proper way. So this is what the essence of systems thinking is. So, and when
The
you look
sum
at
of
it
the
that
sum of
way,
all parts. Yeah.
yeah, it's more than the sum of all parts. Exactly. So if you look at the next slide, you could say, well, if a car is a system and a human body is a system and a plane is a system, you could say a business is a system too. So a system, I said, a business consists of different departments and people working for these departments. So it consists of other elements like IT systems, buildings, machinery as well. And these cannot function without one another. So the business system is even connected to and dependent on elements in the outside world, like clients, legislation, regulation. So if you look at your business in this way, you think, well, okay, I can change one part of this business system, but what does it mean for the other components of this business system? So I can change an IT system. What does it mean for the users of this particular IT system? And what does some kind of change in legislation mean to our organization? Everything is connected together. People are connected together, working for departments. Departments are connected together. They cannot, well, survive without the other departments. And we all have to, change because changes come in all the time from the outside world. So it's essential that BAs realize that the organization they work for is a complex adaptive system. That's a mouthful, a complex adaptive system. So we probably do another episode of the BA Bootcamp for this particular um, topic. So maybe, yeah, we can go to this slide. Um, this is more about what this the BABOK, right? So you probably know, you've seen this one before. The BABOK is the 6 elements that all are interrelated, and they are the definition of the business analysis according to BABOK. Yeah. So what does this have to do with systems? Well, when you implement a new solution, that's one of the elements. Let's say that's a new information system. Then every BA should realize that it's not so much about the IT system itself. It's all about the usage of that information system in the larger context of a business system. So, for every business analysis effort, you could use these elements to say, well, we have a solution. This solution means that we need to change. We need to change not only IT system, but we also need to attract new kind of people, for instance, because we want to have a new business unit. So the solution would be a change in the business solution, the business unit. And of course, this is all dependent on the context. So it depends from situation to situation how big your context is. Sometimes it's a minor change. Sometimes you have to deal with big changes that take many years even. And always, yeah, the stakeholders are part of this system. So the stakeholders should be included in your change. They are part of the solution you're talking about. And of course, in the end, it's all about value for these people. So the new situation always should have value for the organization and value for the particular stakeholders. So that's about systems thinking, I guess.
Yeah, so maybe this is a bit weird that we're now jumping all of a sudden to design thinking, because that one was not on the list we just showed. And yes, this is a BABOK Untangled series, but we didn't want to ignore this one, because we believe that, you know, also probably in your daily work, you might have encountered either, you know, somebody working with it or doing something with it, or you
Yeah.
have done something with it. It's
And
the
we
word
were,
is,
yeah, we explained the relationship with the competencies in a
exactly.
later slide. So that's a little
Exactly.
secret we still have. So first
Yeah.
design thinking, and then we'll
Exactly.
talk about what the relationship is between design thinking on one hand and the things, well, that
Yeah.
you have been seeing before.
Yeah, exactly. So design thinking. So for the people who might not know exactly what design thinking is, so I think most of all it's important to know it's an iterative process, right? You can go back and forward and from, you know, start at somewhere in the middle and go back. You know, it's a process where it's all about understanding your users, right? And your users, you could either be, you know, internal users you're building a system for, or an app you're building for customers. So regardless, so it's really end users that are going to use your product or your service, and you're going to challenge assumptions. You're going to, you know, what we just discussed about problem solving, root cause analysis. I think design thinking is also all about making sure you're tackling the right problems and challenges, and making sure that
Yeah.
you're really focused on the needs of your users rather than, you know, what a system needs or what an internal business might need. So it's really more about creating innovative solutions in an iterative way, also in a fast way. So prototyping, testing is part of this whole process. So it's not just analyzing, no, it's the whole spectrum of, well, in this case, as described here, typically these are, and again, there are many variances of this process, some longer, some shorter. This is like a general example we put here, but basically it has these building blocks where it's about emphasize, where you first really try to understand the needs of the customer. I always, when I start a project, or I need to, you know, get an understanding of you know, a product or a service that we need to improve, I will try, if it's possible, to become the customer. So just to give you an example, I'm currently working more in the automotive space, trying to improve the customer experience on the buying side. So buying a vehicle. Therefore, hey, okay, I'm gonna book a few test drives with different brands to understand how is that experience. Where do I run into? What are actually the challenges? Oh, I couldn't book a test drive online. I actually had to call somebody. That's annoying. So then it's like, oh, hey, by the way, that should be probably something to focus on. How can we improve the conversion of actually getting a test drive booked online? You know, so it's really finding those you know, user pain points. That's where we try to do it, emphasize.
Exactly, and has a close relationship with the customer journey. So, what is the customer experiencing? What does the customer want? What does the customer need? Step into the shoes of this particular person. What do they feel? What do they need? So that's the empathize part, and you really need to do that before you can start defining what the problem is or what the needs are this particular person has. So that's the second step. The third step is about, well, coming up with solution options. How do you know what the best solution option is? Well, by starting to do some prototyping, to be able to do some testing. Does it work? What does work? What doesn't work? Learn as you go. So, as I told you before, it's all about learning here. It's about feedback loops. It's about adjusting what you thought was right. It's about failing as well. Um, when you fail, you learn, and you learn as you
Yeah,
go. So
exactly.
that's all part of design
Yeah,
thinking, and you
exactly.
do it together with your stakeholder, with your customer, with your stakeholders.
Yeah, I was about to say, you're really ideating together. You can call it co-creation or whatever you want to call it, but it's really and it should be focused on business, or in this case customer value, right? So it's so you will not get dragged into detailed discussions around internal processes, because yeah, that's not will benefit your customer. So it's not of importance. You figure that out later. So really, this is about an iterative process, getting from an idea into an actual prototype and tested, yeah, idea.
Exactly. So you see that on the next slide as well. You can see on the left, you see problems or opportunities coming in. Well, the BABOK is talking about business needs. What can you do? What does a business need? What do stakeholders need? So the first, this is actually the double diamond, this is being called. You have two diamonds. The left diamond is all about discovery and definition. So this is of course related to the slide before. So to be able to come up with the right solution, you should first well diverge on your things. So you should think about, well, what's going on? What are people doing? To be able to come with a definition, to come up with the proper solution. And that's the convergent part of the double diamond, the first diamond. And in the end, you will have some kind of solution. Of course, you may have different solution options. So let's say you have one or two left or three. You start developing. That's the second diamond. The developing all these different solution options, and there you start thinking about, well, what can we all add to this particular solution option, and what does the stakeholder make happy? In what way do they become happy? They don't know. They don't know what they want. They don't know what they need. So you just add new properties to this product to find out what's the best, well, the best features. And in the end, you will have business outcome, or you will have outcome for your customers. This is what it's all about. And of course, this is all iteratively. So this is not just a thing you do from left to right. This goes from left to right all the time. There's new opportunities will come in, will be new problems. You will have new ideas. You will discover new uh, well, features or needs to realize in your solutions. So together with your stakeholders, together with your customers, you will come up with a product or a solution, I have to say, that really adds value to them. And that's what it's all about. So the
Yeah, so a lot
collaboration and the customer centric, you can see that in
yeah.
the
So
image as well.
lot of customers you probably all have heard about, really have this design thinking approach, really like part of their almost, I would say, almost culture. So Airbnb, Uber Eats, also the toothbrush Oral-B. Not sure if you know that brand, but they were also still in this kind of, hey, as a company, I think we should improve our toothbrush, where that it can, measure pressure on the tooth, and all kinds of measuring things. But then all of a sudden, when they realize, oh, maybe we should ask our customers what is actually some of the things they're experiencing, and then the thing that came out is the fact that it's always so annoying to charge the thing, and it's it's quite empty fast. So all of a sudden, the areas where they thought they should improve, they were not customer things they're actually annoyed with, or they were not, well, what was, like, call it a nice to have, but definitely if we talk about must have, nice to have, the must have was to improve the charging experience, and also the battery. So all of a sudden they switched their whole ideation and idea generation towards that problem, rather than solving the other thing that they were initially focused on. So that's kind of an example where I think is an interesting to kind of put it in context. But I think the nice thing, and that is one of the things we mentioned earlier, like the cliffhanger of it, is that if you look at the analytical thinking and problem solving competency, which concludes a lot of the elements you see here, is that actually, if you now take a step back, that means that actually this combination of elements is actually design thinking.
Yeah. So design thinking, you could say, is some kind of technique or, well, method or methodology in which you use all these competencies. They come together, like the creative part. It also has a problem solving part. So you stand in the shoes of your stakeholders to be able to come up with the right problem, right? And to make the right decisions at the right time. It's also about systems thinking, because you realize that your customer may have, well, a relationship with other parts you didn't think of. It's about conceptual thinking and visual thinking. So you start thinking together with your stakeholders, do things together, make things visual, to be able to be on the same page and stay on the same page and choose the right solution options and create these solution options to make sure these are the your things your customers really need. And it's learning learn as you go, for sure, because it's all iteratively. Okay, I think enough about this one. So we still have 5 groups to go, Luke.
Yeah, it's a lot of
And
fun to catch up on. But I think the one, I think kind of the key takeaway for me would be in terms of, wanting to develop your competency. I think it's really good to maybe learn a bit more about design thinking, see if you can apply it. Now, or maybe have a group of people where you work with, say, hey, could we maybe, pilot this approach, because it will really help you develop all of these competencies, as you could see. So in terms of, giving you some direction, that will be a good direction to start your learning progress and focus on design thinking. So then we talk about business knowledge, and the chapter business knowledge is basically described by the BABOK as business acumen. I would typically describe that as fundamental business principles, as in, we'll share some examples later, but it's really like, if you start working for a company where you're going to work in the service department, do you understand actually what it means to work in a service department? Like what terminology are they using in that department? How is it organized? Are the typical KPIs measured here, which all kinds of bunch of abbreviations do you get? You get sucked into. So really understanding the principles of that what I would almost call business domain where you're acting in. Then you have your industry knowledge, whether you're working in the utilities industry or the banking industry. That's definitely different, right? Although business analysis is still the same, you might need certain specific understanding of industry specific frameworks or things to make sure that you're more effective as a business analyst. Then you have your organizational knowledge. So do you actually understand your organization? Are you just new to the organization? Then perhaps you should first start understanding more about your organization before you start delving into specific topics, like what's the structure, how's the organization organized, and then we'll have the solution knowledge. So in this case, it can be very broad, right? Depending on which area you're working in. And again, with the example, I will just show you with my personal experience. You come in a company and they might already use Microsoft or maybe Oracle or any specific solution that is already in use. So then it's good to at least have an understanding of what that solution looks like. What are the typical things that they describe? You need to understand in order, again, to become more effective as a business analyst. And then you have the methodology knowledge. Are you working waterfall? Are you working Scrum, Safe? All of these nice terminologies and frameworks. But in order to really, again, become effective as a business analyst, it would be useful to understand the methodology used, as it will help you navigate how you should progress to those steps in that methodology. So I think this easiest way to describe this business knowledge is by using actually one of my own experiences, and that I had to a few years ago jump into a new industry. I was doing business analysis already for a while, but I had to all of a sudden jump into a new industry, a new company, and all of a sudden, I had to build my knowledge. So in terms of building your industry knowledge, how could you do that? Well, what I was, at least started doing is finding sources that are typically known for being the, truthful sources that really describe best the industry trends, the challenges, the threats it's facing, basically generally what is going on in the industry. What are the biggest companies out there? Who are the biggest competitors of my company I'm working for? What are some of the threats faced in this case? Moving from combustion engines to electric vehicles. That whole a change that is currently ongoing. What pressure puts that on my company I'm starting to work for? I mean, I'm not saying that I will be the one business analyst solving all of those problems, but at least I'm able to understand the big trends and the big challenges that are faced out there. So whether I'm going into my maybe more detailed project, I at least understand the relationship with maybe one of those bigger threats or opportunities that is out there. Again, coming back to the traceability of, okay, am I actually working towards the business objectives that are most common for this industry? And so that's one of the elements that I think is really important. Really try to search for, that could be events, that could be magazines, that could be books, any source that is really a truthful source to give you more information about that industry. At the same time, I was starting at a new organization, so I also had to start learn about the organization itself in that industry. Again, I was looking externally first, and simply said, for an industry knowledge or increasing your industry knowledge, you could also use a technique, right? Maybe you should just use the external analysis technique to identify your competitors, the macroeconomic trends like economic, sustainability, all of those elements, socioeconomic, what are it, to get an understanding of the organizational structure, of the processes, of the people, and the architecture, and really understand how they work. Then as a next step, it's important to understand the domain you're actually working in. So do you have the business acumen for the domain you're working in? So for me, I'm mostly working in sales and marketing environments. So I need to understand, first of all, okay, what is sales? What is marketing? What are the activities they're performing? What systems are they using? What KPIs are they measured on? What are the typical definitions being used? In this case, we're talking about opportunity management, about forecasting, about pipeline management, about marketing qualified leads, sales qualified leads, conversion. What are all these topics, activities they're performing within this domain that I would typically describe as, do you speak the same language? That I would typically describe as business acumen. If you get in front of that head of sales or head of marketing, will they be able to have somebody in front of them that understands them, or would they need to explain everything up front? I would say spend some time at least understanding the basic principles of the domain before you're going to go ahead into conversations with stakeholders. And then for me, what I was already used to is, in this case, I have a background in Salesforce, working for the majority of my life with Salesforce. So in terms of my solution knowledge, I already had a lot of knowledge. I know the capabilities, I know the different products it has, I know the different processes it supports, best practices, which ultimately really helps me, coming back to talking about the sales and marketing domain. I really understand from a solution point of view what the sales cloud and marketing cloud capabilities can offer to the business to help drive some of the KPIs and the processes that they're working on. So bringing that together, you become a much more effective and stronger BA than having no knowledge about the solution and no knowledge about the domain you're in. Then definitely you have a long way to go to really become a good or become more effective BA. And I think as a last point is the methodology knowledge. So the company I started to work for is really using the SAFe Agile framework, or the Skilled Agile framework, which for me was quite new, as in, yes, I was used to Scrum and, you know, I would say call it the basics, but I was not really that into SAFe. So, you know, all the ceremonies they organized and all the various milestones they were tracking. For me, that was also kind of, I needed to get used to that. So at least I started to do some basic training on my own, understanding, okay, what is the Skilled Agile framework? How is a business analyst operating in that? How do they work them together with, you know, the other stakeholders within that within the framework? But because ultimately all of these 5 topics, the more you know about the organization, the more you know about the industry, can talk the same language, have an understanding about the solution and the methodology, will really exponentially increase your effectiveness as a business analyst. But yeah, hopefully this helps you as well in terms of, okay, how do I actually then become better in my business knowledge? Well, ultimately it's not about, again, reading one book, or no, it's a combination of activities, talking to people internally, going to events in the industry, understanding the solution. In this case, for Salesforce, they also have a lot of events. Visit those events, see what they're doing, what are they presenting, what are their products, because that really helps you as well becoming a better business analyst. I don't know if you have any other things to add there, Gert, but
No, it's very clear, I guess. No extra things. Behavioral characteristics. So how do you behave? Well, 5 of them: ethics, personal accountability, trustworthiness, organization and time management, and adaptability. Yeah, for ethics, I think being ethical is an important competency for the BA. Well, at the strategy level, would you invest in the Russian market after a big player is leaving? So questions like this. I'm talking about Heineken that came up with a new product that looks like Guinness, and that is the competitor that stepped out of this market. So, well, this would typically be a choice during your strategy analysis knowledge area, and you may be confronted with questions like this. What's the best thing to do? Well, you could choose for this option, but I don't know if that's the ethical thing to do in this particular case. So ethics, I think, important competency, as is a personal accountability. Well, I think it's about doing what you say you're going to do. And that's related to the BA planning and monitoring knowledge area, in which you make your plans for your analysis, but also for your communication and collaboration with your stakeholders. So, yeah, being clear and do what you say. Trustworthiness, a very important competency as well, because BAs need to have the ability to earn the trust of stakeholders. I think that's important to be able to build a good relationship with your stakeholders, because a good relationship will lead to productive collaboration. People who don't trust you won't give you the information, I guess. So that's an important competency. Then organization and time management. Yeah, registering and prioritizing your work. It's about checking whether your work is done in a proper way. And well, this is not only for your own work, but also for the work for your team you work in. So later on, we're going to look at another important competency, team working or team building. Yeah, this is an important one, I guess. Adaptability. We have another slide on that one, but first, let me say, I think this is an important one, because many organizations are adopting agile ways of working at the moment, and that means that everything is changing all the time. And that will mean that you will have to adapt to these changes to survive. And that's, well, ongoing, I would say. So to have an adaptable mindset is a very important competency for BAs especially. Yeah, I had
Yeah, I think what I was trying to say with this slide is that I think indeed, like you're saying, adaptability with the whole idea of agile, and of course not only agile in terms of the projects, how they are executed, but in terms of how a company should be able to survive in with all the macroeconomic trends out there that are changing faster than ever before. So as a company, you need to be agile. Therefore, company leadership might, have different strategies going forward, or faster changing strategies moving forward, which then ultimately comes down to, well, in this case, you as the BA or everybody involved, more on the more detailed level, will need to be able to adapt to that. So I think in terms of challenging yourself, understanding like, hey, am I actually adaptable? Is just asking yourself these questions, right? Oh, okay, a requirement changing for the fourth time now. Will that upset you? Will that annoy you? Will you be frustrated? So how do you cope with that, right? So are you going to work with that? Are you going to be angry on the stakeholder, or are you going to try and figure out, okay, what is it that it makes the change after the fourth time, right? Is there a reason for it? Again, root cause analysis.
Yeah. And if you understand that this stakeholder doesn't know him or herself, because they're still learning as well, that's the other competency, remember. Well, I think it's easier to adapt when you realize people learn all the time, and you will have feedback loops, and you learn as you go.
Exactly. And adaptability is not only about something changing, it could also be at least something is changing on your plan. So in case a stakeholder is not showing up for an important workshop you had planned for, and you were all like ready to go and like, wow, this is going to be the moment, and then all of a sudden it doesn't go through. What do you do? How can you maybe do with the people that are there in a different version? Are you also quickly able to adjust maybe a bit of the content of your workshop? Well, so that's also adaptability, right? It's not only as a personality ability,
and
but how creative are you
exactly
to change the situation?
Yeah, and it's also about, I was working in a team, and that was typically a project with a beginning date and an end date. And later on, we were still maintaining the same system we worked on in the first place, but not in a project kind of way. And that was typical. Well, things got a little bit different. So you should adapt to that as well. Things won't be the same all the time. People in your team will, well, some of them are ill quite often, or they won't show up in some kind of meeting, or well, they leave your team, and there will be new people coming in. Happens all the time. You will start to teach these new people another competency. So yeah, nothing stays the same. Everything will change with time, and you should act accordingly, I guess. Not just as a BA, but as all employees in an organization, I would say.
Yeah,
okay, communication skills. Yeah, that's a nice one as well. I would like to start with listening. And that's the fourth one mentioned, because I think that's, I wouldn't say it's the most important one, but I think you should start with listening to your stakeholders. You should first listen and then start communicating yourself. So first, make sure you understand what other people say. So it's all about receiving information and knowledge in the first place. So that's why I want to say I mentioned this first. Okay. Secondly, I guess I would say pay attention on non-verbal communication. So that's the second one. Pay attention to body movement, postures, facial expression, gestures, things like that. Eye contact. Does somebody make eye contact or not? What does this person look like? What's the tone of voice? Things like that. Very important in communication. So first listening, and listening has to do with paying attention, not only what the person says, but also what the tone of voice is and how this person looks at you. So very important competency. And then there's, of course, verbal and written communication. So that's all about sending information, reading, of course, but also mostly sending information and knowledge to other people. And these are typically key competencies during, well, elicitation and collaboration knowledge area. So, well, communication is all about, well, communicating, of course, but also collaboration, working together with your stakeholders as much as possible. I don't know if you have extra.
No, I think this one is, I think for people, probably this is one of the most clear one, I guess. I mean, it's pretty straightforward.
Quite
I think
obvious.
we all have probably experienced.
It's not easy though.
No,
it's
no,
not
exactly.
easy.
No, that's the point. No, that's a good point, right? It's
properly listening to a person can be very hard.
Yeah, exactly.
So to make sure you really understand, you really listen properly, you should have the right business acumen, as you were talking about earlier, Luc. So this will help you.
There's a lot of relationships with in this case, all the competencies have certain relationships with each other, right? So
they're all related.
Yeah.
And when you start writing yourself, of course, use as much as possible the terminology of the business, because that's what it's all about.
Yeah. And also depending again on the audience, if it's an audience you're writing it for, which is not having the business acumen, like, we all have this experience where we had a bunch of abbreviations in a piece of document, and everybody starts asking like, oh, what does that mean? Oh, what does that mean?
True.
Right? And if you don't have the opportunity to explain it, but people read it and they, on the basis of that, make decisions, but actually don't know exactly what it is, that can cause confusion, right? So it's sometimes it's really the devil is in the details. Yeah. Yeah,
and the last part,
interaction skills, right? That's the part where, in this case, as a BA, it's also coming back to the previous things about listening and communicating, and it's always in the context of probably working with somebody else. Therefore, there is always interaction.
Exactly.
Yes, you will do some things on your own, like analyzing an interview and summarizing it and putting it nicely in slides and everything, and make it present worthy. But ultimately, that what you're doing the interview with, or where you're doing the presentation for, is always in combination with someone else, which automatically makes it an interaction skill, because there's interaction required, where in this case facilitation.
Yeah, that's nice. Lately, I had a training, and the people wanted to try to do some workshop facilitation, and this person started to do all the. Well, it was the first part was a brainstorm session, so he was asking the group of people to come up with new ideas or new requirements, and he was writing all the post-it notes himself. So he thought, well, I facilitate the workshop, so I should do everything myself. That's not true. Facilitating is about making sure you work together as a group, and you make sure you will have, at the end of the day, at the end of the workshop, you will have some kind of consensus, or at least have a common goal with all the people that are in the workshop. Make sure you work towards that goal. Make sure you mention the goal so everybody knows what's going on and what will happen, and make sure things happen on time. That's all facilitation. That's all about making sure you're collaborating in a group of people. That's what facilitation is about. Okay. The next one I think is very important. I did a course on this myself a couple of years ago, leadership and influencing. It sounds so obvious, but actually it's not, because it depends how to behave in certain situations. Sometimes you will have to make proposals based on arguments to have some kind of influence on people and to become a leader. But in other cases, you might have to state clearly what you expect. So that's a different, well, behavior, you could say. Yet in other cases, you will have to just listen and shut your mouth. That might lead to, well, more leadership than you had before. Or there may be cases in which you may have to inspire people you cooperate with. So depending on the situation, you will have to behave in a different way to make sure your influence is rising in a group of people. And I think that's an important part for BAs to get people on the same page. They will have to listen to you, and you will have to listen to them. And of course, yeah, teamwork mentioned already a couple of times. You don't go there on your own. I don't do BA myself. Well, I do BA myself, but most of the times I collaborate with other people. I collaborate with stakeholders, as you can see here on the left side, the business on the right side, IT people. And well, in many cases, you are on the bridge between these two planets, as I mentioned before, to bring them together. Well, you could do that by inviting them for a workshop. There's many other ways to do it. But in the end, you want to have the same, well, vision, the same, well, you want to be on the same page as the people in the room. So yeah, it's an important bridge role,
Yes,
I would
and I
say, in
think
the
here as
organization.
well, if you talk about working with different teams where the call it the business acumen of team on the left side is different than the business acumen of the team on the right side, and you kind of, I always call the BA as a bit of a translator. I often
Yeah,
make the comparison with somebody, two different countries, and you're the one traveling in between, so you need to know both cultures, both kind of ways of working to really make understand that you can make sure that the bridge is created, and
exactly.
they really understand what's being done. And then coming back to this slide, I think what I like about this image here below is with interaction, there's always, of course, a sender and a receiver, and that then you will probably use a channel which is either direct or through an email or through whatever channel you're using, but make sure that you're aware of the things that could get lost in translation, which could be either bias, which often might be unconscious bias. So you might have a certain perception and another person has a totally different perception. Lack
Yeah,
of feedback, as I know, it's just sending, but not listening. Well, cultural differences, as I was describing just now. I mean, with the two different countries, some things could be very common in the one, could not be very common for the other. You might use a very inappropriate channel, like for instance, you want to you have an escalation, and you're going to use emails to, I don't know, with a lot of exclamation marks and big capital letters. Well, probably it's best to kind of pick up the phone and maybe discuss it and talk about it.
yeah,
Same as timing and format, like, oh, you're going to call it 8 in the afternoon or 8 in the morning. Maybe that's not the best timing to discuss a deep technical topic where everybody needs to be fresh and sharp and had to have their, at least a few coffees before they can get cracking on the topic. So yeah, think about this when you interact. Also, it's similar as to the design thinking where you try to put yourself in the customer or the user shoes. What I always try to do is, okay, put myself in the receiver shoes. How, if I would now send this message or whatever it is, how would that be received by that person if I would not hit the send button or, that's, I
yeah.
think, an important one to realize.
Very important. Bring people together when they have a conflict. So there's the fourth one, negotiation. Make sure you listen to what everybody has to say, and make sure. And a conflict, well, that doesn't sound very nice. It could be a conflict between two persons. It could be a conflict about some requirements you have just elicited. to make sure that well, these differences are being talked about. Negotiate, bring them together, and make sure that you well, will be on the same page, will have agreement, ideally, or less ideally, have some kind of consensus with some giving and taking. Very important. We have one more to go. Teaching, last competency. Well, that helps you.
Yep.
Yeah, teaching helps you to ensure that information and knowledge is transferred to others. Well, like stakeholders or peer BAs. So
coaching could be a bit similar here in
coaching.
this area.
Yeah.
In this area.
Yeah.
Exactly. So jump to the
No,
last.
we have still one more to go.
The last
One group.
Last one. So I think this is, as again, maybe less about the competency itself, but in this case, it is an enabler for a BA when doing your job, is to really understand what are the tools and technology I can actually use to make my life and the life of my stakeholders easier. And it could be in terms of communication, in terms of collaboration, in terms of analysis. So I think we just put a few examples here on the right hand side that I think most of you who watch this might already be using or are aware of, but these would be typical examples.
Things like Word. So the first would be Word, PowerPoint, Excel. The second one would be, well, maybe I would say things like visual paradigm or enterprise architect. These are very good business analysis tools in which you can, well, manage your requirements and model your requirements. And of course, then there's communication tools and technology like Miro and Mural and Microsoft Teams. These kind of tools, very important as well. I think you use most of them as audience. I would say Confluence is well, like Jira is a very handy tool you can use for requirement elaboration and also for requirement documentation. So I really recommend tools like this as well.
Yeah, exactly. And then you can have certain areas where, so for instance, in the land of Salesforce, there are also specific tools you could use to visualize frames, wireframing, and to make more things more visual. So again, it's also dependent on in which domain you're active in, which technology you're working with, and there are more tools. So, but at least the goal or the message here is make sure you make use of the tools, you do some research, what tools are available, what will help me become more effective and efficient as a BA.
Right.
That's gonna be the conclusion of today. And I think to summarize it all, I think this is the image we showed in the beginning to highlight and emphasize the competencies in our vision are as important as understanding the knowledge areas, right? So all the things we discussed, you can be very knowledgeable on all the theory and the techniques, but if you cannot apply them or put them into practice in terms of the interaction, the communication, the teamwork, and all the things we discussed in terms of competencies, then you will still not be a very probably effective business analyst. The challenge here is that it's not as easy as just studying for a knowledge area, understanding the technique, and you apply it, and there you go, and you figure it out. You have to have a long breath in order to kind of become better in this, right? So be patient. Training these competencies takes a lot of time, and I would say a lot of practice, right? Probably in any of them, you probably need to fail a few times, or like maybe failing is the wrong word, but trying and experimenting it a few times before you understand really the power of certain competencies and how you actually, over time, you will get better in it. You will not see, oh, I did a test and now I have a score and now I'm good. No, it's over time you will start realizing in every new situation, hey, I actually became a bit better in this. And that's just, repetition, practice. That's all about what I want to say about the competencies. Knowing we're already over the hour, therefore we also want to make sure that the videos are not too long and otherwise, burden you with a lot of time watching these videos. We really want to thank you for your engagement and for your time watching these videos. We hope this was as insightful and insightful as the others, although there's a bit different topic. It is the last one of our BABOK series, so Gert, that's now more than 9 hours of content. So
yeah,
really
the next will probably zoom into one of the topics we already mentioned. Well, I think design thinking is a very nice topic to zoom into. I think maybe systems thinking as a separate session would be very nice. So there's a lot of things going on as well in the world. So maybe you could leave a message you would like to have a BA Bootcamp on. So that would be great.
Give us your feedback, and we will take that into account for one of our next videos. So thank you again for all your energy you're putting into this, watching all of this content, and we hope we see you anytime soon in our next videos. So goodbye.